Hey everybody, Tiffany here. I am in Vienna right now, but I'm getting ready to leave. So I thought that it would be a good idea to share with you all a little bit about my time in Vienna, some of the funny stories that have happened, and maybe some of my experiences in case you think you might want to visit Vienna one day too. I'm trying to be kind of quiet because it's like 2 a.m. on a Sunday morning and I'm in an apartment building. I'm on my regular sleeping plan when I'm in Europe, which is basically that I stay up until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and then I sleep until 9 or 10 o'clock if I can. It's for whatever reason, I always have a hard time settling down and going to sleep, and I'm not sure if that's because I'm not used to the time change or because I get so keyed up from being in the city all day or what. But I'm trying not to talk too loudly so that I don't disturb anybody else. I hope you'll be able to hear me okay. So I thought I would start off and tell you guys a little bit about some of the adventures that I've had in Vienna this week. My friend Lori has been with me, so this has been part of the trip where I'm not traveling solo. I have a partner with me, and she and I have walked miles and miles every day. We have eaten some fabulous food. We've gotten lost more times than I can count. We've seen some amazing artwork and some amazing architecture. We've met some fabulous people. I mean, pretty much if you can think of it, we've probably experienced it on this trip. We've actually spent 6 nights in Vienna, and I have to say that if you want to come and get a taste of the city, I think 6 nights is a really good place to start. Now certainly I could spend weeks here and probably not see everything and do everything, but I feel like I have kind of a good representation of what the city's like and kind of the vibe of the place and the people after having been here for 6 days. So that's something to consider if you think you might want to go to Vienna, because I've read a lot online about people are saying, well, you can do Vienna in 2 or 3 days, or 3 nights is plenty. You don't need to spend any more time in Vienna than that. And I think I would have to disagree. I have enjoyed almost the full week that we've spent here because I haven't had to be in a total rush every day. And I've been able to, spend some leisurely meals, and we've slept in a couple of days. We've stayed up late some. I mean, I feel like it was a good representation of what the city and its people are all about. So here are some things that we did. You all might know that I am a sucker for art museums, and we were actually able to visit 4 different art museums, mainly because fellow scrap gal Martina was willing to take us around, and she actually had museum passes for us, so we didn't even have to pay entry fees into the museums. I mean, this saved us probably 30 or 40 euro a piece, and I mean, that was so considerate and generous of her. I really appreciated it. She took us to see I think the first one was called the National Art Museum, which was beautiful. And then she also took us to see the Vienna Museum, which is they had a special exhibition about maps and kind of models and dioramas and stuff of the city of Vienna. We saw that on our last day. I really enjoyed that. And then she also took us to see the oh shoot, I can't think of the name of it. She took us to see the Belvedere Museum. And actually, of all of the museums that we saw with Martina, the Belvedere Museum was my favorite, mainly because they have a great collection of paintings by Gustav Klimt, who is one of my favorite artists right now. And it's kind of a new thing for me. I was always somebody who really loved Renaissance art and kind of classical kinds of pieces. But in the last 5 years or so, I've decided that while I still love the Impressionists and I still love medieval art, I'm really, really interested in art from the turn of the century. So from about, say, 1900 to about 1940 or so. And Gustav Klimt and his kind of protege, Egon Schiele, are both from that time period. And the Belvedere Museum had some of their pieces. Now, we also went to see the Leopold Museum, and we did that with fellow scrap gal Anne, and I loved that museum too. I mean, of all the museums, that one was probably my favorite, and it was because they had such an amazing collection of Klimt and of Schiele. So if you're not familiar with those artists, I would challenge you to maybe go online and take a look at their work, or I don't know, look at my Instagram feed because I've shared some of their work. I find it very accessible, and some of it is disturbing, but sometimes I like art that is disturbing. I mean, sometimes I like art that challenges my ideas of what art is supposed to be, or what art is supposed to make me feel, or what art is supposed to kind of do for me. And in particular, I think Sheila's work really challenges me sometimes as someone who loves art. And Klimt's work, even though I think he predates Picasso a little bit, it just kind of reminds me of that whole Cubist era. Now, please don't misunderstand me. I'm no art expert, and I can't have super intellectual conversations about art and that kind of thing, but I know what I like, and I know what speaks to me, and sometimes I know why, and sometimes I'm not sure, and I think that's okay. I think that's okay. What I can tell you is that after visiting those museums here in Vienna, I took pictures of some of my favorite pieces, or of some of the pieces that evoked some sort of strong reaction in me. And all I could think about was, oh, I want to sketch that. I want to try to do that. I mean, not like I'm going to be a master or anything, or anybody's ever going to take a look at my work in the same way. But it made me feel really inspired to be artistic. It made me feel like I was itching to sketch, and that's a good feeling, because I haven't really kept up with my 100-day sketching project, and maybe that was kind of the push that I needed to get back on track and to try to finish strong with that particular project. So we did lots of other things too. We visited the Winter Palace, and we also visited the Schönbrunn Palace. I mean, I'm probably slaughtering these names totally, but I was really impressed with the Schönbrunn Palace because it kind of reminded me of Versailles. I didn't go inside, and I have to preface that. We just kind of toured the outside of the building and actually went to the gardens and that kind of thing, but the formality of the gardens and kind of the layout and the way it was situated on this sloping hill and then had hills beyond it, and the forest that surrounded it and all that sort of thing really reminded me of the planning that went into Versailles. When I looked at the actual building, I have to say that it has this winding staircase on both sides in the front, and that reminded me a lot of the entry into the palace at Fontainebleau that I visited outside of Paris a couple of years ago. And it also reminded me of the Royal Palace in Munich, which has that same kind of double winding staircase in the front. So if you're interested in those buildings, I think it might be worth your time to either look through my pictures or to get online and to read about them a little bit. We also visited the Nash Market here in Vienna. That is, it's primarily a food market. It's where locals go to buy fresh fruits and vegetables and meat and fish and all kinds of things. And it is just this kind of cacophony of smells and textures and sights. It's really interesting. And then on the weekend, they also offer like little flea market stalls. So they have the regular stalls that are open through the week that are food, and also some kind of packaged goods, some touristy sorts of things. You can buy, linen dresses from Italy. You can buy scarves. You can buy I don't know, like the little harem pants that are so popular. You can buy postcards and Christmas ornaments and fans and that kind of thing. You can buy those all the time. But on Saturdays in particular, they also have a flea market section at the end of the regular permanent stalls. And in that flea market section, literally, you can find pretty much anything. I mean, there were people there who were selling socks that looked like they'd been worn by 10 generations, and there were people there who were selling vintage cameras. There were people who were selling original pieces of vintage art. There were people who were selling antique jewelry and handmade jewelry and brand new jewelry, and there were people selling handbags. The real ones, well, at least they had a real label on them, right? Like they're not actually real, but there were people who were selling stuff that I probably would throw away out of my garage, but they decided to bring it, to the flea market. And so it was really kind of interesting just to watch and see what people were selling, and also how they interacted with their customers. Now, I don't think that either Lori or I bought anything from the flea market section, but we did buy a few little souvenir items from the permanent stall section, and we put our haggling skills to the test. I walked away from a booth that refused to knock down the price of a leather belt, and Lori was able to bargain with one of the shopkeepers and get 3 of something for €12 instead of 15. I bought a gift for my daughter that started out at €25, and I talked her down to €12. I mean, I wasn't trying to like cheat her or anything, but I think she thought maybe I was a sucker because I was nice, and I like spoke to her, and she thought maybe I didn't know that you could bargain. I don't know. I bought a couple of vintage linen pieces that have some handwork on them that were just gorgeous for €12 instead of 15. So I felt pretty good about being able to kind of haggle with the prices some and get a good deal. And it was a fun experience all the way around. Yeah, it was terribly hot, and we've had like a huge heat wave this whole week, so it wasn't necessarily the most pleasant weather experience, but the sun was shining and the wind was blowing, and we've melted every other day, so it's not like that was any different. And I was able to take some pictures of the architecture around Nash Market because there are some really interesting buildings that are there, and I'll be sharing those on Facebook or Instagram or maybe even my blog. I've been sharing at least one set of photos every day by the time that I come home for the evening, but I haven't like shared everything. I mean, I have a ridiculous amount of photos because I'm taking photos all day, of course, and so is Lori, and I'm sharing my photos with her in a cloud folder that we have, and she's letting me download her folders from her files from her memory card for her camera so that I can have those in my folders too. So, I'm probably at, oh my gosh, for the student trip and for this trip, I mean, I'm probably approaching like 4,000 pictures or so, and I have like 5 weeks of travel left. So, having a lot of photos is something I'm gonna have to deal with when I get back. I'm not worried about it right now. I'm just not gonna think about it. Okay, so what are some other things that we've done? Well, one day we decided that we wanted to kind of take a break from all the sightseeing, and so we actually wanted to go to the beach. I'd been reading online that there's this island in the middle of the Danube River that was built as kind of a flood control zone about 40 years ago, and that they have beaches and that it's a great place to go and spend an afternoon. And so Lori and I, we were super excited, and we packed our backpacks. You know, we've got our swimsuits, and we've got we've got clothes on, of course, over the swimsuits, and then we've got like towels, and we've got a big sheet to lay on, and we have our sketching supplies, and we brought bottles of water, and you know, we've got some sunscreen, and we are like pumped that this is going to be the most amazing, relaxing day. Because I mean, who can say that you've been to the beach on the Danube in Europe? I mean, like, that seems like a really cool kind of exotic thing to do. And I started to get a little bit concerned before we left, because I couldn't find really specific directions in like online forums and blog posts and stuff about where this beach actually was, or even like the name of the beach, or like how you get there. So finally, after searching some old TripAdvisor forums, like from a couple of years ago, I discovered that this area of the island is called Donauinsel. Now, forgive me if you're Austrian and you recognize that I'm totally slaughtering that name, but I'm doing the best I can. Well, anyway, I I said, okay, so, you know, I like Googled what is the metro stop for Donauinsel, because that's where it said to go. And lo and behold, the metro stop for that is hello, Donauinsel. So we, you know, map out how to get there. We have to change lines and stuff, and we head there, you know, around lunchtime one day. We weren't in a huge hurry, because that was like really the only big thing that we had planned for that day. And we got off the subway station, and we find ourselves on this bridge, and sure enough, the Danube is flowing beneath us, and we're like, oh my God, this is amazing. We are going to go to the beach on the Danube. I mean, how cool are we? And we take pictures of the river, we take pictures of the bridge and the street art, and like we take pictures of each other standing on the bridge with our backpacks, pondering the beauty of the blue Danube. I mean, we were like totally artsy and into it. And we realize, of course, at this point that we don't know which way we're supposed to go. Like, do we go right on the bridge? Do we go left on the bridge? We had to go somewhere. And so based on like the landscape, I decide, you know, because I'm the decider, I decide that if we go left, we're going to stay on the island. And if we were to go right on the bridge, then we would actually go back like to the mainland part. So we go left, and we get down to street level, and then I have to decide, are we going to go forward or are we going to go back? You know, because we could have gone either direction. And it just seemed counterintuitive to go backwards, right? I mean, if you think about your life and someone gives you the option, do you want to go forward or do you want to go back? Well, I mean, I hope you would choose to go forward. I mean, that would be kind of the point of living. And so, ergo, that's my thought process. We decide to go forward. And, you know, we hadn't had any lunch yet. We'd had like a little something to eat for breakfast back in our apartment, but we were like, we should probably like look for some place to eat. I mean, it said on my Google map before I left the house that there were places to eat, but you know, you never know what those places are going to be and if you're going to like it. And so we were like, okay, as soon as we come to a restaurant that is open and that looks like something we want to eat, we're going to stop there. And so we did. And we actually shared like a full-size meal. We've been doing that a lot here in Europe because sometimes we're not hungry enough to have a full meal, or sometimes we want like a salad and an entree, and it just makes more sense to share both of them instead of getting our own. And I always ask permission in the cafes because, you know, sometimes people can be weird about that. But every place that we've asked in these tourist areas, you know, has had no problem with it. So it was like a cashew chicken kind of thing. It was an Asian dish, and it was great and tasted very fresh. And you know, we were watching the geese or swan. I don't really know the difference between geese and swan, but we were watching some pretty white birds in the water chasing each other and having their own lunch and that kind of thing. And it was very picturesque. You know, we took each other's picture. We took a picture of our food. Our waiter spoke a little bit of English. I mean, it was like, oh my God, this is the beginning of the perfect day. Full, we paid our tab, we decided we're gonna walk to the beach. and we're just not sure where the beach is, because when we look over to the right on the mainland, it looks like there might be some resort areas, but they seem kind of kiddie in nature. Like one of them had this giant trampoline that was actually over the water, and while I might have a couple of cocktails and jump on a trampoline, I'm probably not going to do it without the cocktails, and I don't want to do it with a bunch of kids. I mean, that's just, who I am at this point in my life, right? So we're like, we don't want to go over there. That doesn't sound fun. And then there were some resort-like looking places that might have been fun to go to in retrospect, but I was thinking they were going to be expensive. I was thinking like, okay, they probably have like a drink minimum, or you have to pay a cover charge or something. And we were going to be kind of, like kind of hippie-ish. We were just going to the beach. And so we start walking. And it's not long before we realize that as we walk, there are numbers painted on the pavement that tell you how many kilometers you've walked. This will be important in a minute. And, we're chatting and laughing and talking about how great the beach is going to be, and are you going to get in? Well, I don't know, are you going to get in? And, how are we going to spend our afternoon, and what kinds of things are we going to draw, and did I bring the watercolors? And we're just having conversations, and we're also like checking out the people, of course, that we're following and that we run into, and we soon discover that there's this paved area that we're walking on, and then there's a little strip of beach. Well, I use that term loosely. There's a little strip of riverbank that's maybe 3 feet wide, maybe 4 feet wide, and then a sharp drop off into the water on our right. And then on our left, there's it's kind of like a hill. It's almost like the riverbank is sort of continuing up, and it's a gentle slope. And then you have woods. And all of this is covered in grass that is like knee high. And I can see as we're walking along that various people have pulled off with their bikes, or, where they've been hiking or whatever. And some of them have set up camp on the right in the little patch before you get in the water. And some of them have like laid out sheets and blankets and stuff up on the slope. And we're like, well, I guess if that's your thing, and you're you're super crunchy and you want to enjoy the water like that, I can totally see that. And especially if they have like little kids or something, I'm like, well, you probably got tired and just gave up, and this is just, where you're going to be. But I'd read that there was a beach, and I was excited about going to the beach. And I'd also read that there was a nude beach, and I wanted to go see that. I wanted to go see which people like had the nerve to swim nude in front of other people. And so I was like, okay, I want to go to the regular beach, and I want to sketch, and I want to get in the water, and I want to take pictures and stuff. And then after I've checked out the regular beach, we've had a good time, I want to walk down to the nude beach and see what all these people are doing, because that's just who I am. Well, so we keep walking, and we keep walking, and we keep walking, and we're watching these kilometer numbers tick over and tick over and tick over. Well, we drink our water. All our water's gone. We need to pee. Well, there's nowhere to go to the bathroom. Unless you count the bushes, but God knows what might happen, or what might crawl up your leg, or other regions if you were to like pee in the woods, And so I'm like, well, I'll just sweat enough. I won't really need to go to the bathroom. Well, I'll just tough it out. And we're not seeing anything that looks like a beach. Now, at some places there are steps down into the water, which is nice, but there are big groups of people around those. And in other areas, there are like these little plastic, little floaty dock things that are big enough where several people could have, spread their towels out and lay out in the sun, and then they have like little ladders into the water, and those are pretty nice. But again, they've all got people on them, and it feels weird, like for two mature women to walk down there, like say in English, to a bunch of little teeny boppers who are probably German. Hey, can we hang out with you? Can we swim next to you on the river? That just seems a little creepy. So we kept walking, and Lori's like, we're not going to find it. We've turned the wrong way. Are you sure? And I'm like, let me turn my data on, because of course there's no Wi-Fi hotspot out there. Are you kidding me? And so I turn my data on, and it shows we're on the island as predicted, and that we are moving towards the last, third of the island. And we're walking under these bridges, and we're like, okay, that looks like a tramway, and that looks like a subway station, and that's a highway, because we realize at some point we're going to have to go back. At some point we're going to have to hook back up to the subway system or something in order to try to get home, because it's not like this is a place where you could have called an Uber. Okay, that's not going to happen. So we keep walking. Finally, Lori's like, we're never going to find it. We're going to have to ask somebody. So then it becomes like a contest. Okay, so who are we going to ask? Well, we're not going to ask the, 18-year-old little hottie girls who are, spreading their suntan lotion on around their designer bikinis and looking like too cool for school. We're not going to ask them because they might play a joke on us or, humiliate us in some way. And so I just don't have the courage for that. And then we're not going to ask the oldish dude in the Speedo who really shouldn't have had one on, if you get my drift. No, we're not going to ask him because we don't want him to know we're lost. He might have, like some weapon in that Speedo or in his bicycle basket. So we're not going to ask him. Thank you very much. And we're not going to ask the people who appear to be training for the Tour de France as they are zipping past us on their bicycles made for racing in the mountains. We're not going to ask them because if we try to get their attention, they'll probably run over us and cut off a leg or something. And so we're like, who are we going to ask? And this becomes the big topic of conversation for, like 3 kilometers. And finally, we come upon this this pair of women. And we're like, okay, we could ask a couple of women for directions. One of them is about my age. One of them's a little bit older. They're by themselves. We're 2 women, one about my age, one's a little bit older. We're non-threatening, there's a good chance that the one my age speaks a little bit of English, and so I work my nerve up because you all know how much I like to talk to strangers. I work my nerve up and I walk over and I'm like, hello, because that's the way I think European people say hello, because, who knows? I don't know the hello word in German. I don't know that. Anyway, and the older woman very warily responds, hello. And I thought, oh, this is going to go great. This is going to be fabulous. And so I asked them if they speak English, and the younger one replied. And I'm like, we're looking for the beach, and we can't seem to find it, and we're wondering where it might be. And she looks at me like I have lost my ever-loving mind. She goes, the beach is here. And I just looked at her incredulously, and I said, but there's no sand. And there's no flat part, and no one has mowed the grass. And she goes, you want a prettier looking beach. And I think, well, yeah, I want a prettier looking beach. I'm on the freaking Danube. Hello. I want to be on the beach, and I want it to be gorgeous, and I want to take pictures and, and then manipulate them so I look cute. But yes, I want to be on the beach. And she chuckles softly and she goes, no, this is the beach. I thought, oh my God. Because the number that we just passed, FYI, the kilometer number was 17.9. Do you want to know how many miles that is? I thought you might. That's 11 miles. That's 11 miles that we had walked to try to get to this freaking beach that does not actually exist, apparently. And so the look on my face, even behind my incognito sunglasses, must have been like heartbroken. And I said, okay, so this is it. And she said, well, down that way, they have the beach where you can swim naked, but yes, this is it. And then I'm faced with a quandary because I wanted to see the naked people, right? But I've already stopped and asked these women for directions, and when she said, oh, that's where you can swim naked, I chuckled nervously because I didn't want her to think I was going to go, swim naked. And I realized now that I've asked her, I can't go that direction. I don't have the courage in this foreign country where absolutely no one knows me. I don't have the courage to walk down and stare at the naked people after all. And so I stopped for a minute. I said, okay. How do we get back to the subway. Well, FYI, Germans don't call the subway the subway. No, they call it the U-Bahn, or actually, I'm incorrect, the U-Bahn. And she looks at me strangely, and I said, the metro? Well, that didn't help because, that's what the French call it. Hello. And I said, U-Bahn? Because, I had this flash of inspiration and knowledge that that's what they call it. And she said, U-Bahn, U-Bahn. You have to go back the way you came. Well, at that point, I was like on the verge of a string of expletives, let's just say. And I said, but the kilometer we just passed said 17.9. And she goes, yes, you go back 17.9. And y'all, I thought my head was going to spin off at that point. I said, oh, thank you. Have a nice day. And as Lori and I walked off back the way we came, we looked at each other, and I said many things I will not repeat here, but the gist of it was we've got to walk another 17.9 kilometers. Well, that was wrong. We didn't. Actually, when we got to kilometer 15.2, FYI, there was a train station that we were able to pick up. It was not the original one that we took to get there, because FYI, there's more than one that gets there, and we took the furthest one away, but that's a whole other story. That is the fault of people who post on the internet. But we did have to walk, 4-ish kilometers back the way, well, 3-ish kilometers back the way we came to catch the train. And in this whole 4.5-hour saga or so of just walking this little paved trail, we sat on the beach for 15 minutes. Now, I'm not going to tell you the whole story yet because I want to save a little something for the podcast, but I want you to remember the phrase pig path, because part of our story took place on a pig path. And all I can tell you at this point is that Lori must trust me implicitly, because I don't know that I would have ever followed someone onto the pig path that we took for part of this journey. So, just kind of to wrap up some of the other things that we did while we were in Vienna, we took a day trip to the Wachau region of the Danube Valley, where we took a bus trip, and then we took a boat ride down the river. We explored the abbey at Melk. It's a Benedictine abbey that's still working. Well, parts of it date back to the year 1000, if you can believe it. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site that was pretty amazing. And we spent the afternoon there, and then came back to Vienna, so that was a lot of fun. We spent a day being squired around by Scrap Gal Martina, taking us all over the city center and showing us various things. We spent another evening having dinner with her. We also spent an afternoon and evening with Scrap Gal Anne, who took us all to all kinds of really fun places in the city and showed us things and told us about the history. And then we had another evening that we spent with Martina, where we explored a little bit and had a lovely meal. And I like Vienna a lot. I'm comfortable with their currency. They use the euro. Things are a little more expensive here than, say, Budapest, but it's not nearly as expensive as a city like London or Paris, or even the cities that I've visited in Switzerland. It's much more reasonable than that. So I liked that. Most people speak a little bit of English and are happy to do so. I think that the U-Bahn is very simple to use. We actually bought the 1-week transportation pass that allowed us to use the U-Bahn stations, the buses, and the tram system at an unlimited rate for the whole week, and it was very reasonable. I want to say it was maybe 15 or 16 euros to be able to do that. I really enjoyed the food, not necessarily because I love Austrian or German food, although it is good, and there are certain things that I really do enjoy, but because there was such a wide variety of different kinds of food. We had Italian food one night, we had Greek food one night, we had Turkish food one night, we had Austrian food, of course. I ate well here in Vienna, and I appreciated that. I think for most of my meals that I had, they were around maybe 15 euro, including a cocktail, which I think is reasonable, and I'm talking about like dinner, not like lunches. I found that most people were happy to give me a cup of ice if I asked for it pleasantly. So that was one of those things that made me really happy. I found a drink two drinks actually that I really like. One of them is called an Aperol Spritzer, and that's basically like kind of an orange flavoring and a white wine with some orange pieces in it, and that kind of reminds me of a sangria maybe, or a little bit of like a tinto de verano that I enjoyed in Madrid last year. And then I also really like the Radler, which is another mixed kind of cocktail, but it's made with beer, and they mix it with either like an apple juice or a lemonade and some soda water. And so I really have enjoyed both of those, and have found them to be really refreshing. Gosh, what else do I want to tell you? If you've ever thought about going to Vienna, I think you ought to give it a try. It sounds very, very exotic, but I have found that it's actually really accessible. I did not feel nearly as overwhelmed or nearly as lost as I did in Budapest. And I think part of that is because the names are a little bit easier for me to pronounce. I think that the fact that it's German feels a little bit more natural because there are so many words in English that are similar to words in German. I think it was maybe because the currency was easier to understand, and because it is a very kind of centrally located old town with very clear directions and lots of different stations for transportation and that kind of thing. It's not a super fast-paced city, and it's not super crowded like I expected it to be. So those were some nice surprises too. It's a little more laid back than maybe a city like London or like Paris, and it's a little less intense than a city like Rome. So I enjoyed that. Of course, I haven't told you all the things that we did, and I haven't told you all the stories because I can't do that. I've got to save a little something for my blog or for my or for the podcast. Did y'all see that spider just now? It like dropped down from the chandelier. Okay, I'll have to get out my spider killing like paraphernalia here in a minute. That totally freaked me out. But I just wanted to pop in and say hello and tell you a little bit about my experience in Vienna before we head to Prague in about 9 hours. So maybe I should get a little bit of sleep. All right, I will talk to you again in the next city. Until then, I hope you're getting crafty and maybe feeling inspired about traveling. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.